And we have a guest on the telephone who's been with us before. Happy to bring back Dr. Lou Wing to discuss the latest developments and everything else that's going on. We'll get to your phone calls a little bit later. But hi there, Dr. Wing. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Good.
Good. How's life in San Diego today?
Life in San Diego. Sans people. I mean, we have literally taken the distancing very seriously with all the beaches closed.
Yeah.
And now it's remarkable how quiet it is. So
Yeah.
I really believe, just like it is in Orange County, with our death rate, okay, it's fairly low down here in light of other areas of California.
Yeah.
It's that. It really is. It's remarkable how serious people really are about this in this area. I thought it would have been totally the opposite, but I guess it's because all the students are gone, so that's probably why.
Yeah.
So, everybody had to go, and the party stopped. So
Yeah.
You sound a little hoarse. You're okay, right?
Okay, yeah. I know. I'm fine. I'm fine. It is interesting because this is kind of, let's face it, cold flu season, right?
Yes.
So the minute you even have a hint of it, it's all of a sudden, everybody's got the skull and crossbones over your head. And, and I get that. Yes, we are fine now.
I heard somebody earlier today at the station sneezed. And instead of saying, God bless you, I said, oh, no. And then I said, sorry. God bless you.
Well, we do have spring allergies, too. And with this wind,
Right, exactly.
But you get a nose tickle or you get like a tickle in your throat and you're like, is this it? Is this it?
Yeah,
Do I need to further quarantine myself? And so I heard of a lot of people, one of the reasons they had to put restrictions on the test is because people were going in there, it's hypochondriacs arise season too,
Oh, yeah, big time.
So
absolutely.
And then when people go to the hospital, even if their malady is something not even close to that. I was reading about an actress who just went to the hospital. She'd just been in Mexico and she has Turisto, and she's demanding to be tested for coronavirus. And the doctor is saying, you don't, meet the criteria. I'm really sorry. And she's like, I hate Pence. And I'm thinking, this really does seem a little bit,
Yeah, Pence wrote the doctor and said, don't give her, don't give her.
Don't. If she doesn't have every single symptom on this list, do not give it to her. But she actually... Anyway, we won't talk too much about her because I don't want her to be recognized because you'll probably read her stories because it's, every place.
Oh, yep, exactly.
So, Lou, what's new? I think it was last week we had a conversation here on the air, and we were kind of still in the very early stages of things, and there were, kind of sort of predictions about where things were going to go. I mean, there were some pretty radical predictions about millions and millions and millions of people not only being infected, but perhaps even dying and so forth. So where are we at now from your professional point of view?
Well, and from our profession in general in the drug development world, we are really looking closely at, just as we're hearing on, most of the Anthony Fauci and all of the comments that they're making as of today, we are in a really very, very vital phase of taking, just like I was saying a moment ago, seriously, this idea of, stay at home and, sort of like this residual. However, there is an interesting paper, and I think you and I talked about the two different researchers at Stanford.
Yep.
And, looking at the rates if 100 million Americans ultimately get the disease, right? There, as you said, 2 million or 4 million could die. And so if we think of that probability, and if we look at what we're actually seeing, that doesn't seem to correlate. And especially with the 500 million that were anticipated in England,
right.
And now they're saying it's 20,000 that would actually, that reduction is really evidenced by, our reality. And these models, these algorithms that have been, epidemiology is obviously not an exact science, but it is a model that we have to sort of look at, in terms of the different regions of the world. And, this disease, because it is such a cultural phenomenon, and because there's reason to believe that patient zero has actually been identified as a woman in Wuhan who had the shrimp and was real covert about her symptoms and spread it to 27 different people, and the whole story is sort of developing as we speak, and we're wanting to find out if it's always going to go back to how much of this do we believe and do we have facts and so on, and yet within this transmission is this really interesting something that's so misunderstood as far as the level of contagion, and we still, again, I'd love to say we have all the information, but within our organization, we are partnering with over 50 different organizations that have changed their indications to a COVID-related indication. And it's not just a financial thing, it's because they're all changing, they're leaving certain types of cancer and rare disease treatments just to focus their drug development and their vaccine development teams exclusively on this, whether it be for a respirator, whether it be for a therapeutic antibody, whether it be antibody development, vaccine development, all of these different indications that they have close to the expertise for. They know that this is something that is going to be, needed in the next 6 months to a year. So coordinating the different organizations right now has become a big factor. And I think we're living in this gray zone of where have really hyper exaggerated the numbers and or we want to make certain that we haven't.
Yeah.
So we have to stay within that range at least for another 1 to 2 months minimum.
Yeah. So when you say stay within that range for 1 to 2 months, do you mean stay with the protocol that's in place now with the, kind of the everybody social distancing, sort of the lockdown on large gatherings and things like that?
Well, and some of the comments that have come out from the steering committee is the fact that, there are regions of the United States and throughout the world where there has not been any change in either the number of cases detected and or those that have died. And because we're really looking at mortality rates, we're trying to understand that when we talk about seroprevalence, that means those that have antibodies that have been generated already and have shown no symptoms. And, how much of this virulence are we really to be concerned about? We can really never know that until we get a cleaner clinical study that would show us the potential of getting a disease versus just being seropositive.
Yeah.
And once we have that idea, that could be projected into different areas where we could start to allow, businesses to begin and so on. So I think it's going to be regional. I believe that in the New York cities and the LA specifically, where we see a lot of very close communication and, there isn't the, I'm not saying they're not respecting the distance, but there are certain regions where it's very difficult to, just like it was in China, to not have the distance. We're going to see a greater prevalence. However, places in Oklahoma and, Montana and so on are just, they're different in terms of, distancing. So, but it still doesn't negate the fact that we have to keep this mindset, at least for a period of time.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking, and I wonder what you think about this, because, this is so front and center with everything. I mean, it's just the 24-hour news cycle is all coronavirus, basically. We're talking about it. I mean, I think right now, as far as the numbers of deaths, I think it was yesterday I read there's 500,000 cases worldwide, about 500,000, right? And there's something like 25,000 deaths, I think. I can't remember the exact numbers.
Approximately,
Yeah, something like that. And I just thought, what if, like with the flu, for example, what if every time somebody died from the flu, it was reported, it was put on, national news, international news. I mean, wouldn't we be living in a panic even then? Because the flu statistics, the death from the flu annually is considerably higher than what we're seeing right now with the coronavirus.
Exactly. And then we really don't even bat an eye. We don't even realize what that is. And it's because the flu and the flu deaths are most often, and not exclusively, associated with other conditions.
Right.
And it's sort of the final stage of a variety of different diseases.
Yeah, right.
And this is also an ancillary disease, as we're seeing. That's why the complications of giving COVID I'm having to do that right now. As a matter of fact, in my consulting, I have to have a projected timeline for these different compounds and how we would say it's associated exclusively. What proportion of this indication that this individual died from was COVID related.
Yeah.
And being able to, disentangle that is become a real challenge.
Right.
Because, it's a variable, and yes, there's been some hideous, lung histologies that we've seen in different figures and so on. But, the question is, are we seeing that?
Yeah.
And is that really what people are actually, part of their death? I mean, the ones that are here in San Diego have all been associated with another disease.
Yeah.
So,
and I think I told you, and I don't remember if you read it or not, but I read that report from that, official from Italy, and he was talking about the way they report fatalities, and he said that is the problem in this high fatality rate is that if they had COVID, it's just automatically being assumed that that was the cause of their death. But he said every single patient had 2 to 3 other conditions. And the 2 to 3 other conditions were more than likely what killed them, or maybe the coronavirus hastened it because of the previous conditions. But
exactly. Does this exacerbate the already whatever the condition is? Was it kidney failure plus this? And so on. So I really think that's what our challenge is right now. But, saying that, it gives you that sense of, well, finally we can take a breath and we can sort of, let down our guard. And that's the danger zone. So, it's this vigilance, whether it's hyper or just, standard vigilance that we need to maintain, we are seeing the results right now.
Yeah.
And, I know it's having an economic impact big time. Yeah. But, you just saw the bill that was just signed today, up to $6 trillion. I mean, this is an insane amount for an economic recovery, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even realize the number of zeros on that. And yet, it was just signed. And so what is that going to do? And how is that going to get disseminated? And how is it going to affect small businesses and, in general? Yeah. Well, it's meant to keep our economic, status alive.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of our panic and our worry is, sort of central around economy related to this. And so I just think it's fascinating what this is unveiling in so many of our lives, personally and corporately. It is just absolutely astounding.
Yeah. And I think
what I've seen, though, in Orange County is I think people generally, especially here in Orange County, are cooperating. I mean, when you go to the market, Brian and I were there 2 days ago, and there's strips that you stand on, so you maintain 6 feet from the register, people in front of you.
Right.
And so what I see is this mass spirit of cooperation, which, the hardest thing for me is that they closed down the parks and the beaches. Because Brian and I went walking there, and everyone was keeping social distance, but we all needed to be outside. We all needed to walk. And I wonder sometimes if by closing the parks and the beaches, if they're not congesting us, inadvertently,
Yeah.
But I think it's a reaction to, all of a sudden in March, the parks and the beaches were packed like it was July or August.
Right.
So I think that was partially, everybody, because we went to our normal place, where we go to the beach and walk.
Usually
normally we
solitary.
see maybe 3 or 4 people on a 5-mile walk, and we saw like 5,000 people. I mean, there were so many people. It's unbelievable.
I know. Yeah, I know. Exactly. And so the pendulum had to swing.
Yeah.
So
Lou, let me ask you this. So, there is talk that, perhaps, and, the president has said, it would be wonderful if we could get things back up and running by Easter. He hasn't made any promises, said, it's a long shot.
Right.
But, that would be great.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, to me, that just doesn't sound realistic.
Well, not only does it not sound realistic, but by this time, something would have been said that's sort of leading towards that.
Yeah.
My gut sense is Tony Fauci basically made this statement as, don't even think about it at this point. And so with that in mind, I think it would be really, because nobody would partially let down. They would let down completely.
Yeah.
It would be very difficult to understand what that mid-zone is.
Yeah,
so,
exactly, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, even if they said, okay, well, you can go back to having a gathering of 250. Somebody with a large congregation, when you say, okay, the first 250 can come to church and the rest of you have to catch it online. Yeah, so, we were talking to our staff today, and it's like, no, we're going to be online. Good Friday is 2 weeks from today. So
I know it.
We're
amazing.
Yeah. So we're going to try to be creative with our online services, but we will definitely be online.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a lot of things you can do. As a matter of fact, what you've been doing has been amazing. And I think it's this really challenge to creativity, and understanding the times.
Yeah.
Because, God's obviously got a plan in all this, and He's certainly teaching us a lesson. And I think a lot of the lessons are always going to boil down to financially and where we're at with spiritually in our attitudes. It's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And I think we just have to keep in mind that, the Lord, it's not a cliche to say the Lord is in control. And just to rest in that. And I think, I've not too many people, but occasionally, I see people commenting like, oh, gosh, we can't gather as a church, and that's so bad, and why are they doing this to us? And it's like, well, we can survive. It's okay. God is still God, and we're still the people of God, and if we can't congregate in our building for a while, it's okay. The Lord's going to get us all through it. So,
Right. I think the onus becomes even more so with the leadership in terms of, how do you, let the sheep go, but also keep them in, that dynamic balance of we love you enough to respect the distance, and how that plays out is so important for us to not see this as a vacation, but to see this as how God wants us to, be involved in others' lives, whether we can stand next to them at this time or not, It is. It's a real interesting time. I don't think it's going to last for, years on end.
Yeah.
Talking about the flattening of the curve, I believe that is happening.
Yeah.
And especially in areas like Orange County and in certain areas of LA. I just think some of the deeper areas like up, in Silver Lake and all these kind of places where, it's super dense, you're going to have that challenge.
Yeah.
And the individuals, recognizing that, family and so on, it's going to be a challenge. So that's really what's going to be the impedance in it.
Yeah.
It's the urban areas.
Right. Okay, well, thanks so much for the update, and give our love to Pam. And
absolutely.
Can't wait for the lockdown to end so we can hang out.
Have coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can't wait. Yeah.
Maybe even take a walk on the beach together with you guys.
Well, now, wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah. I know you ride your bike everywhere, so we could just watch you.
Good. Walking's good. That's right. That's right.
All right, Lou. Thanks so much.
Guys. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Lou Wing, our guest on the first half of the Pastor's Perspective program. And you can find out more about Lou. Just Google his name. Lou is spelled L-U. Lou Wing. Look him up that way.
Lou for Lumen.
Lumen. We've been illuminated today on the program. Yes.
Yeah. Lou is very illuminating.
Yes, he is.
I think his mother sensed that when he was born. Like, he's going to be...
Maybe he was glowing.
Maybe
he was glowing when he was born.
Yeah.
He definitely has so much energy.